The Plantagenets were a dynasty of kings in medieval England, which originated from the lands of Anjou in France. They held the English throne from 1154, when Henry II came to power, until 1485, when Richard III died. During the Plantagenets' reign, England was transformed. Often, the Plantagenet kings had to negotiate compromises, like Magna Carta, in exchange for financial and military support, which limited their royal power. Hence, the king was no longer considered to be an absolute monarch. As a result of the 100 Years' War, the Plantagenets were discredited and plagued with economic, political, and social problems. Various freedoms were denied, resulting in widespread popular revolts. King Henry II was the first Plantagenet king, and he set a precedent for his descendants because he had a large appetite for violence. He was known as Henry Curtmantle because of the number of people that he killed in his life. He married Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was formerly the Queen of France, to King Louis VII, and added her vast holdings in southwestern France to those he already had. This made him one of the wealthiest men in Europe at the time. Henry had a good upbringing and education in France before he travelled to England. Upon the death of his grandfather, Geoffrey Plantagenet, he became Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou, Maine, and Touraine. King Stephen had let his cousin, Matilda of Anjou, mother of Henry II, set aside her claim on the English crown in England. In 1153, at the age of 20, Henry II invaded and persuaded King Stephen without a fight to accept him as an heir to the English throne. When Stephen died, his title passed to Henry without any opposition, hence becoming the king, and gained control of a territory that stretched from Scotland to Ireland. King Henry II was strong and quick-witted, but he also had a temper that could be ruthless when necessary. He was a good companion, who kept up with witty banter. He exhibited restlessness and impetuousness, even if it inconvenienced others. Henry II made some remarkable accomplishments, but they were tempered by the stresses in his life. He had a dispute with his beloved friend Thomas Becket, who later became the Archbishop of Canterbury, as well as a discord within his family. The murder of Thomas Becket by Henry's knights, which was a misunderstanding, put Henry in a difficult position as he got a lot of condemnation for what happened, even with his subjects, making it difficult for him to govern. As a consequence, the church was disrupted, throwing him into conflict with Louis VII of France. Because in the Middle Ages, the church was higher in authority than the kings. Henry's scandal about Becket's murder was just the beginning of his troubles. Many disagreements erupted within his own family, causing setbacks to Henry's plans and putting his life in danger. This left him disheartened. The cause of the quarrels in his family was chiefly Henry II's policy of dividing his supremacy to his children. However, he remained the ultimate authority among his sons. Henry II crowned his eldest son young Henry as king and made himself regent in 1170, but in fact the young king had no power. In 1173, young King Henry opposed his father's plan of giving lands to John Lackland instead of Geoffrey, who were his siblings. Young King Henry was joined in the protest by his brother Richard and their mother Eleanor. The nobility in England and Normandy, along with France's king at the time, Louis VII, and Scotland's King William I, staged a revolt together with Henry II's wife and children. Henry II's reputation diminished after the murder of Becket, but he reacted by settling matters in Normandy and Brittany, stretching across England where fighting and revolt had continued for a year. On July 1174, he did a public penance at Canterbury. After the penance, everything started to fall into place, and Henry believed that God is now on his side. The Great Revolt was defeated with Henry's military combat and also with the help of his talented local commanders, many of which were appointed for their loyalty. 3 weeks later, Henry had put down a rebellion in England. His sons were pardoned, but his wife Eleanor was kept under house arrest until her husband died for her crime of treason. Nonetheless, peace won't reign for long. Philip II Augustus, son of Louis VII, who was King of France at the time, took advantage of Richard's fear of Henry II making his brother John the future king, and this ultimately led to the final rebellion. In 1189, King Henry II was defeated by Philip and Richard, and he was forced to give away his throne. He died soon after and was succeeded by Richard I. Richard I, also known as Richard the Lionheart, was the King of England from 1189 until his death. He was the second monarch of the House of Plantagenet after his father Henry II, and he played a significant role in the Third Crusade. Richard is best known as one of the most famous and successful military commanders in English history. In July 1189, Richard was granted Normandy, and in September he was given the crown of England. Unlike Philip II, who had only one goal, which is to maintain peace and order in France, Richard's sole ambition was to lead the Third Crusade. He did not focus on other aspects such as reorganizing his new territories. Richard was king for the purpose of leading a crusade. The idea of weakening his empire did not suit this goal, and he soon realized that it would be better to compromise with Philip II rather than separate from him. They avoided open war because Philip also took the venerated Crusader's cross. Richard spent his father's treasures and also sold some of his judicial districts and other imperial offices. Thus, he raised a formidable fleet and an army, and in 1190 he departed for the Holy Land Jerusalem to fight in the Third Crusade. During the Third Crusade, he played an important role as a Christian commander who led the campaign after Philip II of France's departure. His victories against his Muslim opponent, Saladin, included reaching a peace treaty and ending the campaign without retaking Jerusalem. He spent most of his life in crusades, either in captivity in Italy or defending his lands in France. Richard died at age 41 because he was impatient and made the dash to seize a bucket of gold which was discovered by a peasant. The local viscount refused to give it to him, and Richard laid siege on the viscount's castle Châlus-Chabrol. In an unlucky moment he was injured and killed during the attack in the year 1199. Edward III, also known as Edward of Windsor, was the great-grandson of John, son of Henry II. He led England into the 100 Years' War with France. The 100 Years' War was a series of conflicts between England and France. The war originated from disputes over the French crown, where both the Plantagenet line of English kings and the French Valois line claimed to be heirs. His descendants fought over the throne for generations, which culminated in the Wars of the Roses in the year 1455–85. He was noted for his military success, and also restored the royal authority after his father, Edward II's disastrous reign. He led the Kingdom of England to become one of the most outstanding military powers in Europe. His 50-year reign was one of the longest in English history. Legislation and government underwent crucial changes during his lifetime, including the evolution of the English Parliament. He lived longer than his eldest son Edward the Black Prince, and the throne was succeeded by his grandson, Richard II. King Edward III had 9 surviving children, 5 of which were boys. His famous sons were his eldest son, Edward the Black Prince, and his 4th son John of Gaunt. Edward, also known as the Black Prince, is known for defeating the French at the Battle of Poitiers in 1356, where he captured French King John II, who later became his prisoner. This victory made him very popular in France. He was an outstanding general from the 100 Years' War and got his nickname from wearing a black coat of armor. Similarly, his brother, John of Gaunt, was an important figure during the reigns of both his father and his nephew, Richard II, and was a notable military leader. As well as being father to King Henry IV, he was also a successful politician. His success gained him wealth, which helped him become one of the richest people of his time. His death marked the beginning of the House of Lancaster's ascent to the throne. Richard III was the last king from the Plantagenet dynasty. He overthrew his nephew Edward V to become king. As a king, he was portrayed as the worst and most wicked, but was defeated by Henry Tudor at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1483. Richard's defeat led to the rise of the Tudor dynasty, which also marked the end of the Middle Age in England.